We have seen the war between Palestine and Israel. For more than a century until now, over millions of lives have been lost. Surprisingly, some of the entities got the benefit of these types of wars, like American weapons manufacturers. We see the stock of these companies increase day by day. The two major defense contractors in America, Raytheon and General Dynamics, have unabashedly accepted that they take financial advantage of the war in Israel. Most of the arms companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman have gained a huge stock over the past 3 years. F-35 Lightning II fighter jets, Black Hawk helicopters, submarines, and combat vehicles that Israel uses are produced by these companies. In July 2023, Israel signed a $3 billion deal to buy these F-35 fighter jets. One might wonder about the source of Israel's substantial military budget. An obvious answer would be that it is an Israeli taxpayers' fund. But look at this news article. In Obama's presidency, the U.S. and Israel signed a deal of $38 billion. According to this deal, the U.S. provide $38 billion worth of military equipment to Israel annually. As a result, 92% of Israel's imported weapons now originate from the United States of America. But what does this matter? If a country is buying weapons from an ally country, it would not seem suspicious. But the weapons industry doesn't care about any alliances. All weapons company works for the same objective, and that is to earn maximum profit. In January 2023, the United States announced a record-breaking sale of $205 billion of weapons to various countries worldwide. Only one country sold weapons worth more than $200 billion in a year, 49% of marking increase the previous year. These weapons are sent in 58 different countries, not only Israel, but also to different Arab nations such as Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, Bahrain, and Iraq. Here the question arises: does selling these weapons can make the world a safer place or unsafe? Not only the United States, but also Israel broke a record for weapon sales last year. Around $12 billion of weapons are sold by Israel, including drones, missiles, rockets, and air defense systems, in which 24% of weapons were exported to Arab countries. Now Israel became the 10th largest arms exporter in worldwide. The top 4 positions are occupied by the United States, Russia, France, and China. The United Kingdom holds the 7th position. Surprisingly, these 5 countries are the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. If we combine the sale of all these countries, then it becomes over 75% of global arms exports. Then how can we expect that the United Nations would maintain peace globally? In the past year, Oxfam International's head of the New York office revealed that 4 permanent members of the UN Security Council out of the 5 are the world's leading arms sellers. These weapons are used for war worldwide. This is blatantly immoral, complicit, and hypocritical. On the other hand, Germany, Italy, and South Korea are also the top 10 arms exporters for these weapons industry. It does not matter what is right and what is wrong, who is an ally and who is not. If we look at the largest arms importers, India is at number 1, then Saudi Arabia and Qatar. However, the interesting thing is that positions on 5th, 7th, and 10th are covered by China, South Korea, and America. This suggests a complex game of buying and selling weapons. On the global stage, Putin, the president of Russia, stated that the Israel-Palestine conflict should be the failure of U.S. policy. The U.S. neglects the Palestine issue. But China stated that Israel's actions in Gaza are characterized as self-defense. These statements might create the impression that the U.S., Europe, and Israel are on one side and China and Russia are on the other. But when it comes to weapon exports, these seemingly opposing nations find themselves on the same platform. Together, these nations export the most weaponry worldwide. By now you might be thinking that these countries are truly terrible, that we should be protesting the countries exporting weapons worldwide. But if you are thinking so, you are missing the point. A nation is formed by its citizens. Americans are not bad. Neither are Russians, Israelis, or Chinese citizens. The prominent figures in this perilous weapons network are not ordinary citizens of America, Russia, Israel, or China. Ordinary people in these countries do not enjoy the advantages of arms sales. Instead, it is private weapons manufacturers who are reaping the profits. The majority of globally sold weapons from these countries are not directly sold by governments, but rather by private capitalists. If we see the top 100 weapons companies, among the top 100 companies, only a small number are government-owned, such as Israel Aerospace Industries or the Aviation Industry Corporation of China. Excluding these exceptions, the majority are private entities. Lockheed Martin, an American company, holds the top spot, with Northrop Grumman following in third place. In fact, 51 of the companies on the list are American. The substantial profits generated from weapon sales flow into the coffers of these private companies. Ironically, the funds used for purchasing these weapons often originate from taxpayers. As governments finance these acquisitions, numerous nations acquire weapons either from private companies, within their own borders, or, when engaging in international transactions, collaborate with private entities from the respective countries. Hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayers' money are funneled into these companies through these procurement processes. These funds are subsequently used to acquire weapons, which inevitably find application in conflicts impacting ordinary citizens. A report from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute in April of this year highlighted the leading nations in military expenditures, with the United States topping the list at $877 billion, followed by China at $292 billion, and Russia at $86.4 billion. The top 10 list also includes the UK and France, and notably, all 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council are on this list. A prominent question arises: why haven't these 5 nations collectively decided to halt the wasteful spending on weapons? A collective commitment to abstain from attacking one another could be a transformative step to stop the financial drain on military budgets. However, the irony lies in the fact that the primary casualties of the weapons industry are often the citizens of these nations, including Americans. The frequency of mass shootings in America is alarmingly higher than in any other country. This year alone, till mid-September, over 500 mass shootings occurred, with a tragic impact on children, making school shootings a distressingly common phrase in America. In 2021 to 2022, more than 327 school shootings took place in American schools. The high incidence of school shootings in America is directly linked to the lenient regulations surrounding gun ownership. In America, the readiness to use firearms is often attributed to favorable gun ownership laws. The argument suggests that if the sale of weapons were prohibited and strict regulations were in place, preventing anyone from selling firearms, it could potentially lead to a reduction in gun-related incidents, including shootings. The idea is that restricting access to firearms might contribute to a decline in such incidents over time. But how would the weapon manufacturers benefit then? This is why dozens of children lose their lives in America every year. Politicians show the emotional responses, but the gun trade is not affected. Disturbingly, between 2005 and 2020, gun sales in America tripled. In the past year, Americans purchased a staggering 16.6 million guns. It is not difficult for the government to control the violence. Governments do not need to bow down to the weapons industry. If we take the example of Australia, it was known for lax gun regulations, but in April 1996, a 28-year-old man killed 35 people with a semi-automatic rifle. Due to this mass shooting, Australian Prime Minister John Howard took decisive action to address the issue of firearms. He implemented the National Firearms Agreement between October 1996 and September 1997. The Australian government initiated a buyback program following the implementation of the National Firearms Agreement. During this period, over 650,000 privately owned guns were voluntarily surrendered by their owners in exchange for monetary compensation. The program also provided legal amnesty to individuals in possession of firearms illegally, allowing them to turn in their weapons without facing prosecution. This comprehensive initiative aimed to reduce the number of firearms in circulation and enhance public safety. As a result, these types of incidents were never seen in Australia. Same like Australia, Serbia experienced a similar initiative earlier this year, following to shootings in May that resulted in 17 deaths, including children. The government responded by declaring 1-month amnesty period for citizens to surrender their unregistered weapons voluntarily. Within just a week, over 13,500 weapons were voluntarily turned in. Subsequently, the government extended the surrender period, leading to a total of more than 100,000 illegal weapons being handed over within 2 months. It shows that if government want, then it can effectively control weapons and mitigate violence in certain regions. The influence of the weapons mafia has expanded beyond arms sales. Private companies are not only profiting from selling weapons, but have ventured into providing private armies, commonly known as mercenaries. During the Russia-Ukraine war, it is seen that the Wagner Group gained attention when they attempted to overthrow Putin. From the government, Putin considered them an anti-national force. The group was subsequently banned. But do you know how this group formed? The Wagner Group started in Russia by itself. President Putin had said that this group received funding from the state budget, a fact that was initially denied for a few years. But Putin eventually admitted to allocating $1 billion to the group per annum. Dmitry Kiselyov, who was the head of the state-controlled Russian media group, stated that the Wagner Group was provided a total of $9.8 billion by the Russian government. It sounds bad that taxpayer money was used to finance private armies. But here the question arises, why didn't Russia use its army? Why does it hire private mercenary groups? The primary motivation behind this decision is cost-effectiveness. In a wartime scenario, providing funds to a private company allows the company's private army to fight the war on behalf of the country. Deploying the national army entails various financial obligations, including pension payments, salaries for army officers, health insurance, and compensations for the families of martyrs. This can be a cumbersome burden on a nation's finances, while hiring contract fighters may be advantageous. As once a country pays a private military company, the company assumes all associated responsibilities. The question of who would choose to fight as part of a private company's armies is often answered by the profile of mercenaries. These individuals frequently come from economically disadvantaged countries, compelled by financial constraints and limited employment prospects. These private armies are not only contracted by governments, but also by private companies and warlords. The Wagner Group, for instance, engaged in conflicts beyond Ukraine, including countries like Syria, Sudan, Mozambique, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Libya. Not only Wagner Group, Russia has also employed other private military companies like Potok, Don Brigade, Mir and Security Group, Slavonic Corps, and Enet Corp. Not only Russia, but also Israel is renowned for its cyber mercenaries who engage in cyber crimes for money, including hacking, forging blackmail material, disinformation spreading, planting false intelligence, and surveillance. Team George, an Israeli cyber mercenary group, interfered in 33 presidential campaigns and successfully influencing 27. Facebook exposed and banned 7 cyber mercenary companies in December 2021. These companies had targeted almost 48,000 people worldwide. 4 of these were Israeli cyber mercenaries, like Black Cube and Cobwebs. Apart from this, you would have heard of Pegasus, an infamous spyware sold to governments worldwide, which was being sold by an Israeli private company, an Israeli private cyber mercenary group called the NSO Group, talking about America, between 1994 and 2007. Approximately $300 billion was spent on 12 private militias. One of these private military companies is Blackwater. Founded by former U.S. Navy officer Eric Prince, Blackwater hires fighters from various countries, including the Philippines, Bosnia, Israel, and Chile, selling its private services for money. In September 2007, Blackwater got viral when its mercenaries killed 17 innocent Iraqi civilians.
It was one of the worst killings of innocent civilians by U.S. contractors in Iraq, and a huge blow to America's efforts to stabilize the country.
Although 4 individuals were initially being prosecuted, they were pardoned in 2020 during Donald Trump's presidency. Blackwater's involvement has contributed to the escalation of numerous wars worldwide. In December 2021, a United Nations report accused Eric Prince of violating the weapons ban in Libya. The ongoing conflict in Libya is now characterized as a private war. Look at this news article stating that Blackwater was hired by the Obama government to provide security in Afghanistan in 2010 for $220 million, and public tax money was handed over to these private armies. If we move to 2021, when the Taliban regained control of Afghanistan, reports from the Wall Street Journal revealed that Eric Prince was charging $6,500 per person to facilitate safe evacuations from Afghanistan on charter flights. During the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in America, Blackwater secured a $73 million contract to assist the FEMA staff during the Katrina aftermath recovery operation. Not only this, Eric Prince has also made significant political donations to Republican politicians. This intertwining of financial contributions and business transactions works quite well here. The only difference is that the super-rich businessmen are not only corrupt, but they're dealing in weapons transactions that can kill people all over the world. Eric Prince handed donations to politicians, and the politicians handed contracts to his company Blackwater in Iraq. Over 160,000 Blackwater employees served as guards for U.S. officials. An internal report from Blackwater disclosed that, among 195 shooting incidents in the last 2 years, the company's employees shot the first bullet in 160 instances. It's also quite common for politicians to invest in stocks of these private contractor companies, thereby becoming direct shareholders. This goes beyond a mere bribery situation. Any benefit made by the company would directly benefit the politician. George Bush was the U.S. president during the Iraq invasion. His father was a board member of the Carlyle Group. This same group was awarded numerous defense contracts through companies like Vought and United Defense. The U.S. Vice President, Dick Cheney, used to be the head of the company Halliburton, which received a $7 billion defense contract without any competitive bidding. The same company was awarded contracts to restore the oil sector in Iraq. Now, many people allege that the real reason behind the Iraq War was Iraq's oil. Oil companies like Halliburton, ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, and Shell established themselves in Iraq. As of December 2021, there are at least 15 influential politicians in America actively shaping U.S. defense policy, who have personal investments in these military contractors. They are directing U.S. military policy, while profiting from these arms-selling companies by holding their stocks. By now, two key points should be clear. First, in wars like the Israel-Palestine situation, the weapons industry reaps significant benefits. Second, politicians benefit from it since they are personally invested in it, especially those who have investments in these weapon manufacturing companies. Adding to this, the third point emerges: politicians often derive political benefits from wars. When politicians have to answer for issues like corruption and unemployment, they can use wars to divert public attention. Especially for dictators, war serves as an effective distraction. This highlights a stark truth about the world's weapons industry. An industry whose existence would be jeopardized if global wars were to cease. Perhaps this is why it is beneficial to continue wars. To ensure the continuous flow of money, it is our responsibility to aware people about this worst game. If you found this video informative, then appreciate us by subscribing and liking our video.